Hello there, my name is Bill McKibben. I'm going to spend the next 350 seconds and not a second more telling you why 350 is the most important number in the world and what we're going to do about it at 350.org. I've got the most vital urban landscape in the world, the new city in Shanghai behind me here. It's a good backdrop for thinking about global warming. First, some science, just a little, don't worry. For all of human history, indeed for long before human history, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was 275 parts per million. That's the normal level for human civilization. Then, about 200 years ago, especially in the West, we began to burn huge amounts of coal and gas and oil. When you burn those things, you release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and that carbon dioxide traps heat that would otherwise radiate back out to space. That carbon has been accumulating in the atmosphere quickly. At the moment, there are 387 parts per million CO2 in the atmosphere. Now, we've been worrying about global warming for 20 years, but we never knew exactly what the danger level was. We'd begun to fear in the last few years that we were already past it because we were seeing very dangerous things beginning to happen. All of a sudden, we were seeing dramatic increases in drought because warm air takes up more water vapor than cold air, and in flooding because once all that water's up in the atmosphere, it's going to come down someplace. We were seeing the quick spread of mosquitoes and with them dangerous diseases like malaria and dengue fever. We were seeing rapid melt of glaciers high in the mountains. Then, in the summer of 2007, almost all the ice in the Arctic melted. We had the Northwest Passage open for the first time in human history. This was such a shock to see half the ice gone across the Arctic that it caused scientists to reevaluate just how far along this path we were. In December of 2007, the world's greatest climatologist, James Hansen, came up with a new number. He crunched all the data and told us that 350 was the top safe limit for carbon in the atmosphere. Anything more than that, and the world was going to start changing quickly. As I've said, we're already at 387 parts per million, so that's a tough number. It's like going to the doctor and learning that your cholesterol is too high. You're at greater risk of stroke or a heart attack until you can bring it down. The planet will scrub some of that cholesterol out of the atmosphere with forests and with oceans if we stop putting so much carbon into the atmosphere. And that's what we've got to talk about now, from science to politics. For most of the history of industrial civilization, it's been the West, the United States more than any place else, that's been pouring carbon into the atmosphere. Now, as you can see behind me, the East is beginning to catch up. This is the first purely global problem, and it's going to take great global cooperation in order to make change happen. We have a little experience in forcing this kind of change. 2 years ago in the United States, a small group of us launched a project to organize public opinion around the United States. We organized 2,000 demonstrations in all 50 states, and when we were done, we had a real and measurable effect on the political system. We were demanding that the U.S. Congress agree to cut carbon 80% by 2050. And when our demonstrations were over, Barack Obama adopted that as his policy. We have some hope now that whatever the outcome of the presidential election, America will finally begin to take up some of its responsibility. But that responsibility needs to be global, so we badly need a global movement to do just the same sort of thing. We need to spend the next 18 months spreading that number 350, because luckily the UN is getting ready to hold a big meeting in December of 2009 in Copenhagen to come up with a new global agreement. If that global agreement is strong, if it respects 350, then we have some chance going forward. To make that happen, we need all kinds of public rallying behind this. We don't have the time to attack this problem one light bulb at a time. We need to do it one political action at a time in order to spread this number all around the globe. It's starting to happen. Just in the last few weeks, we've seen people who heard about this number 350 take out full-page ads in the New York Times, the International Herald Tribune, the Financial Times, with all kinds of VIPs signing on. But as important as those VIPs are, even more important are all the actions that are beginning to happen on the ground. The farmers in Cameroon, in Africa, who have begun to plant 350 trees around the edge of their village, the people who are riding 350 strong on bicycles around state houses in the United States, the youth in Delhi or in Sichuan or in many other parts of the world who are rallying, the churches that are ringing their bells 350 times. Think of some way to make this number real. Then come to us at 350.org and tell us what you've done. We'll spread it everywhere. Thank you.
The world's average surface temperature has soared to its highest level ever recorded, surpassing record levels of heat measured just one day earlier and the day before that. This week's string of record-shattering hottest days came as climate scientists warned last month was the hottest June ever recorded, with 2023 on track to become the hottest year in human history. Meanwhile, a new report in the journal Nature Communications warns changing weather patterns and extreme heat due to the climate crisis will exacerbate the global food crisis, with lower crop yields anticipated in the near future. All of this has added new urgency for broad government action to address the climate crisis, but much of it has been thwarted by fossil fuel lobbyists, which we'll talk more about in a minute with The Guardian reporter Oliver Millman. But we begin with author and environmentalist Bill McKibben, co-founder of 350.org and founder of the organization Third Act, whose new Substack piece is headlined, "No Human Has Ever Seen It Hotter, but the sun that's cooking us could cool us too." His latest piece for The New Yorker is headlined, "To Save the Planet, Should We Really Be Moving Slower? The Degrowth Movement Makes a Comeback." Bill, welcome back to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us. So the 3 hottest days in human history, some say in 100,000 years. Talk about what's happening and what needs to happen.
Well, good morning, Amy. On the one hand, there's nothing surprising about what's happening. It's what you and I have been talking about for literally decades now. Scientists have told us that this, as we pour carbon into the atmosphere, is the inevitable result. But we are seeing in 2023 that result come to the fore. We've seen truly startling things. It's now a reasonable chance that this will turn out to be the hottest year ever recorded. We've already had, as you say, the hottest days, the hottest week. We just had the hottest June. If you think it's bad here, really have some place in your heart for the people living in spots that are beyond hot and unlikely to be air conditioned. Last night in parts of Algeria, cities in Algeria, the nighttime temperature stayed above 103 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the hottest nighttime temp minimums ever recorded in Africa. So all around the world, we're seeing remarkable, remarkable things going on. And this is just as the El Nino Pacific warming begins to kick into gear. The next 18 months are going to be a time of chaos and havoc as we go to temperatures that no human has ever seen, no society and no infrastructure has ever endured. We don't know precisely what will happen, but we can predict that it's going to be very, very hard. And we can predict really too, I think, that this is the last of these moments we're going to have when the world is summoned to action by events and when there's still time to make at least some difference in the question of how hot it ultimately gets.
Can you talk about the degrowth movement, Bill?
Well, as you know, there's ever since the limits to growth in 1972, I guess, there's been this critique that the world can't keep growing as it has been, that it'll eventually lead to ecological collapse. That eventually seems to be coming true. But it is a very strange moment because, on the other hand, we understand that we need to increase very, very quickly the amount of green energy and clean energy that we're producing. And that requires growing at least one thing: solar panels, wind turbines, batteries, and so on. So my piece for the New Yorker was an attempt to square that circle, to say, are there ways that we could use this moment of extraordinary need for technological change to also produce some social change along the way, to build a different kind of world? We need to make the technological change. And I think we also need to make some really serious social change as we do it towards a different kind of planet. The good news is that we're beginning to see the payoff from some of that technological change. You know, Texas was the center of the heat wave in the US so far this year. This heat dome settled over Texas, and the numbers were astounding. There were cities setting new high temperature records 10 days in a row. But the grid did not collapse in Texas, and it did not collapse, one analyst after another is telling us, because of there's a lot of solar power on that grid, 4 times more than there was in just 4 or 5 years ago. And that power, not surprisingly, solar panels do well in heat waves. That power has been enough to keep Texas going. Of course, and as Oliver will make the case in a minute, the irony is that the Texas legislature is busy trying to help the fossil fuel industry and close down its renewable industry. But so far, it's renewables that are doing the job there. And believe me, utilities around the country are starting to watch, because they understand that not only is this power cheap, it's truly critical in the world that we're headed into now.